A new administration is overseeing what appears to be a rekindling of ties with longtime ally, the United States. The visit of U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris reaffirming the alliance between the two countries in, among others, mutual defense. The Chinese Foreign Ministry saying it has nothing against U.S. interaction with regional countries for as long as it promotes peace and unity and is not damaging to other nations' interests.
We will continue to rally our allies and partners against unlawful and irresponsible behavior. When the international rules-based order is threatened somewhere, it is threatened everywhere. As the United States has long made clear, we support the 2016 ruling of the UN Arbitral Tribunal, which delivered a unanimous and final decision firmly rejecting China's expansive South China Sea maritime claims. The tribunal's decision is legally binding and must be respected.
Good evening. I'm Pia Hontiveros. Welcome to your weekly political appointment fix politics. As usual, our guest tonight, political analyst Dindo Manhit. We're also expecting Clarita Carlos, National Security Advisor, to join us in just a bit. But in the meantime, let's speak first to Dindo. Dindo, thank you very much for being with us tonight. Let's begin with this incident at Pag-asa, the vicinity of Pag-asa Island, where you had this Chinese Coast Guard taking rocket debris away from a Philippine Navy vessel a few days back. Let's begin with that. No, how are we supposed to look at this? Because China, Beijing, was claiming that there was a friendly consultation and that the rocket debris was turned over to them. However, the Navy and the our Philippine Defense Department are saying that that's not what happened. They're saying that there was an altercation, voices were raised, and they had to, in the end, give up the rocket debris and give it to the Chinese Coast Guard. How are we supposed to look at this?
Good evening, Pia. Good evening to your televiewers. Key word there is we need to assert our rights with regards to our territory, and part of that is controlling those debris and maybe engaging with a neighbor like China in a peaceful way, but to have that confrontational stance, that is not good in terms of asserting our rights with regards to our territory within our maritime rights within the international law order.
When you say, Dindo, our territory, it's very clear, right? This the place where the area where this happened is Philippine territory.
Yes, of course, there are what we call territories that are within what we call sovereign territory, and there's also territory within our economic zones. But in this case, the position even of our own defense establishment, our Philippine Navy and our Coast Guard, is that we are within our maritime rights, protecting the integrity of our territory by laying claim on this debris. We could have settled it in a way whereby China or the Chinese officials there would engage us in a less coercive way.
Mm-hmm. However, the Navy was saying that they had to give up the rocket debris to avoid tension, and we're paraphrasing their statements. No, kumbaga parang sa madaling salita, para na hindi pa lumaki ang gulo, ibinigay na lang. So if you're saying, Dito, like a while ago, you said the key word here is assert. We should assert our rights, our territorial rights, our maritime rights. But if we assert our rights and then you have the Chinese Coast Guard insisting on taking the rocket debris and the Navy, giving it up because they said, para na lang hindi lumaki ang gulo, paano na yon?
That's the problem when we view it in a friendly way, para wag lumaki ang gulo. But on the other hand, it's aggression on their part. Mm-hmm. So we need to assess where we stand. And what is critical really, at the end of the day, is that we cannot deal with a neighbor that will continue to be aggressive against us in any little way, because this is a very simple, you'd say, situation that could have avoided any friction between those two groups, Chinese Coast Guard on one hand or our Philippine Navy. But we should be engaging this neighbor from a position of strength, holding on, number one, on our right based on international law, and also building alliances, strengthen our capacity to defend ourselves, have that defense posture to protect and assert our rights within our own territory and our economic zones.
Before we go further and talk about alliances, Dindo, I just want to ask about this first. No, does it matter? Because ang salita na ginamit ng Beijing is that there was a friendly conversation or friendly exchange. No, does it matter if it was friendly or not? I mean, the mere fact that, as you were saying, so Philippine territory and hawak na ng Philippine Navy, tinutow na nila yung rocket debris. Does it really matter kung friendly o hindi?
It could be friendly. As I've said, there could have been a good exchange. But the mere statements of our own security establishment saying that para wag na lumala, that itself is a reflection on we should have control of that. We should have asserted ourselves and see what is this rocket within our territory.
Yeah, when you say we should have asserted ourselves, so would you say that the scenario that we were looking at, sana ang nangyari, is the Philippine Navy, and if I'm not mistaken, it's a rubber boat, could they just have ignored the Chinese Coast Guard and then left the scene, move away from them?
That's always, of
Pwede
course,
ba yun?
possibility. It did not happen, but that is the best possibility in asserting our rights. And I think we would gain the respect more if we will assert our rights.
Okay. I'm reminded of the incident late last year when a supply ship that was headed, a Philippine vessel supply ship headed to the BRP Sierra Madre was it water cannon, right? by the Chinese Coast Guard, no? Merong ganong insidente that parang ganito na naman. It's like this just keeps happening again and again, and yet we keep filing note verbals, diplomatic protests, etc. But this just keeps happening.
We've been saying, for anyone who looks at this from a strategic point of view, we are being coerced. Our neighbor is becoming aggressive towards us. And they are doing this in what we call an asymmetric attempt, in terms of warfare, or somebody would say the gray zone, that there is no conflict. Everybody's trying to avoid conflict, but we end up not asserting our rights, which for me is the sad part of this situation.
When you say
I think it's time for us to...
Sorry, you think it's time for us to...
Yeah, to be assertive. If we are within the bounds of the international law, we're within the bounds of what we consider our territory. Because we are not doing anything, we're not being aggressive. We are just asserting and defending what we define as ours based on international rules or international order accepted by countries.
And if we are not asserting our rights, does it mean that we are giving it up? Na bumigay na lang tayo, na tumiklop
but
na
we
ba
are
tayo
weakening our position. And I remember a study that was conducted in partnership with Pulse Asia, whereby 9 out of 10 Filipinos would like us to be more assertive under a new administration with regards to our protecting our territorial integrity and our maritime rights. Statements of government has been quite strong this past few months. So maybe we can turn those policy pronouncements into strong actions without really being provocative. We're just defending what is ours, asserting what is duly ours from an international law perspective.
You're referring, Dindo, to, for example, one of the very first pronouncements of President Marcos, where he said that we are not going to give up even an inch of Philippine territory. What you're saying is that we need to flesh that out. Halimbawa, may ganitong situation na naman, scenario na ganoon.
I don't think we are at that situation. We are not giving up any territory, but we also need to assert within our territory our rights. And as I've said, we can engage with anyone within our territory to a peaceful discussion, but it should not always be para wag lumala, or we keep on giving in. And it weakens the view of our own neighbor. Maybe from their point of view, they can bully us, which is not good.
We're going to take a very quick break. Dino Manhit still joining us. We are expecting Clarita Carlos, National Security Advisor, to be joining us also when we come back. We'll be back after this quick break. Stay tuned.
The United States and the broader international community have a profound stake in the future of this region. America's prosperity relies on the billions of dollars that flow through these waters every day. And we are proud to work with you in your mission.
Welcome back. This is Politics as Usual. Still with us via Zoom, joining us via Zoom, political analyst Dino Manhit. Dino, there was a statement a few hours back, I think it's a few hours back, no, from Beijing, where they said that nakita na raw nila ang debris at naunahan lang daw sila ng Philippine Navy vessel doon sa area, which sounded a bit strange because if they had already seen it, if they had already seen the debris, at mas malaki naman talaga ang mga barko, mga vessels nila, hindi ba sila dapat nauna sa area? So, wala lang, how are we supposed to understand that?
Nothing else to understand except at the end of the day, if our own Navy, our own Coast Guard, our own defense establishment tells us that they are within our territory, then that means we are within our rights, our maritime rights, and we have to protect that. That's why I used the term earlier, integrity of our territory.
Yeah, at
no
nauna,
matter what explanation of China is, it's within our territory. And I don't think China would like us to do that within their economic zone or within their territory.
Okay, all right. It just so happened, of course, this is all happening, kumbaga ang ganda ng timing. You have U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris visiting, going to Palawan, making all those pronouncements as we had shown just a while ago in those sound bites that we had aired in the first part of the show and just moments ago. So now there's all this talk about EDCA, the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement. Before we go any further, we have several personalities claiming that EDCA is unconstitutional. Is it? Is it unconstitutional?
How could it be unconstitutional? It has been debated in the Supreme Court, and there was a decision that came out with it. So that's an old argument that has been settled by the Philippine Supreme Court, who is the only institution in Philippine society, in the Philippine Republic, that can decide what is constitutional or not.
And we are looking at EDCA as something that can be beneficial to us. Is it going to be beneficial to us in the long run?
Even more especially in the short run, Pia, the idea of an enhanced defense cooperation agreement is to help build that capacity for the Philippines in the short term, help us strengthen, modernize some of our bases, our assets, military assets, in at least attaining a credible defense posture. And the United States, as part of our alliance, as part of the Visiting Forces Agreement, came up with this agreement that was signed as far back as 2014, argued in the Supreme Court, whereby there is an opportunity, as it was allowed by the Supreme Court, to help build our capacities by looking at, I think, an initial 5 bases, military bases, to protect, most especially, security challenges in the West Philippine Sea area. So this is positive, and this does not violate in terms of the constitutional provision on bases, because these are
not bases,
sites,
no?
temporary sites. Sorry?
These are not bases. They're temporary sites, locations within Philippine bases.
Yes, and also temporary visits, so within the Visiting Forces Agreement. So that, I think, that was made clear already. in the arguments in the Supreme Court.
Well, like you said, no, 8 years ago pa yon, no? It seems to be a Filipino
We have
thing.
wasted
Yeah.
6 years of this of not moving forward with EDCA. Imagine if we could have built our capacity the past 6 years, because it got stuck in the Supreme Court first, then nothing moved in the previous administration.
It seems to be a Filipino thing. Is it a Filipino thing? We seem to enjoy having lengthy debates, discussions, dialogues, conversations about something, and then we finally agree on something, decide on something, and then may tanong na naman. Like this whole EDCA.
That's a problem.
Thing.
There's no question about it anymore because
Yeah.
it was settled by their Supreme Court. But what is important is we lose time in strengthening our capacity, in achieving that at least minimum credible defense posture that can be in parallel with the FP or the Armed Forces of the Philippines Modernization Initiative. We're losing time, and we're losing strategic time in terms of preparing ourselves to protect our own territory.
After 6 years of the administration of Rodrigo Duterte, where he did bring us closer to China, bring us closer to Beijing, and then now you have Bongbong Marcos coming in as the new president, and then trying to get trying to cozy up again with the United States. Is this good for us? That like BBM was saying, no, friend to all, enemy to none. Talk to everybody. Don't just put all your eggs, I suppose, in one basket.
I think what we are seeing is really learning from the missteps of the previous administration, that the appeasement strategy of the former administration of President Duterte did not really lead to anything that would have served the interests of the Filipino people. It kept us from modernizing our own bases through EDCA. It kept us from strengthening our strategic partnership and alliances with countries that are ready to support us with regards to our own defense needs, defense concerns. So what we are seeing with President Marcos Jr. is a big step forward. And we should not be drawn that this is only about the United States and China. What we're seeing with the approach of President Bongbong Marcos Jr. is that he's trying to build stronger alliances, stronger partnership with countries that are willing to support us as we assert our rights based on this rule-based international order. Especially after our July 12, 2016 arbitral award. Now we have countries ready to work with us, to support us. And we have lost so much time, and now it's a catch-up time for the Marcos Jr. administration. And they are in the right path. So we should continue to strengthen and broaden our partnership and alliances, not only with the United States, but with other countries that share values of international liberal order, maritime order, as key to the engagement with other countries.
We have more from our guest, Dindo Manhit. I know we did say that the National Security Advisor, Clarita Carlos, was supposed to join us for the show, but we're not quite sure what's going on yet. More from Dindo Manhit. When we return, this is Politics as Usual. Be right back. You're still on Politics as Usual, still with us, political analyst Dindo Manhit. Dindo, Beijing was asked about the visit of Vice President Kamala Harris of the United States, and the quote is, quote, "We are not against the USS interaction with regional countries, but it should be good for regional peace and stability and not damaging to other countries' interests." Sino kayang other countries' interests na yun ang tinutukoy doon sa kanila?
It's kind of surprising, that statement, Pia, no? Because what interests are they talking about? I think what we are seeing, especially with the trip of not only Kamala Harris, but the trip of leaders of the United States government under the Biden presidency, it's simply a way for them to continue to define themselves as partners and allies, not only of the Philippines, but other Indo-Pacific countries. We have seen them engage with countries, not only us, but also countries within the ASEAN, especially maritime ASEAN nations. We have seen them engage stronger with Japan, with South Korea. So there are no countries saying that there's any interest except China. But China will always speak of their interests. So let the Filipino people look at it from their interests and let the Philippine government reflect that interest the Filipino people desire.
Let's talk about, Dino, before the show ends, this nuclear energy cooperation deal. So, predictably, you have, for example, the Makabayan bloc warning of possible problems because of this deal. Is this something to worry about, or is this something that we need?
What deal are we talking about specifically, Pia? Sorry?
Yeah, nuclear energy cooperation deal with the U.S. Dahil meron daw problema sa, for example, no, Makabayan saying possible leaks, meltdowns, nuclear reactors, may U.S. bases. So this is something that we should not be getting into. Or how are we supposed to look at this now?
I think there's a science behind that. And we have our own Philippine National Nuclear Research Institute
PNRI,
that
right.
can provide better analysis than political groups like the Makabayan bloc. If it is not safe, if it affects the safety of communities where these nuclear plants will be, then let the scientists define it as such, not civil society organizations that does not have a science behind their argument.
All right. Dino, let's wrap up the show. I want to get your final words on, well, everything that has been happening. No? So we have, and it seems to be parang ang dami-dami nangyayari in the last few days. No? So you have that incident, Pag-asa, in the vicinity of Pag-asa Island between a Philippine Navy vessel and a Chinese Coast Guard vessel that rocket debris, and then the differing explanations as to what really happened. You have Vice President Kamala Harris coming in for a visit to Manila and to Palawan. All this talk about new areas under the EDCA, the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement. All this talk again about the Mutual Defense Treaty between the U.S. and the Philippines, this rekindling of ties between the U.S. and the Philippines, and then China making its voice heard pa rin, no, in the last few days.
At the end of the day, Pia, we always need to understand that in the policy direction of any country, and in this case, our defense and security policy, our engagement with other countries, not only with China, but our other countries that we consider could be of big help for us within whatever interests that we have from economic, security, and defense. What should be paramount is how do we promote Philippine national interest? How do we assert and protect our territorial integrity and our maritime rights based on the international maritime order? These should be our concern, not what China is talking about. But if there are countries, not only the United States, who would continue to support us in asserting our rights, in strengthening our capacity, then that should be taken positively by the Filipino government, by the Philippine government, because we have seen that in studies that we have done regularly twice a year, that there are countries that we consider as trustworthy because they're here with us, helping us, building our capacity to defend ourselves against any aggression by a coercive neighbor.
Dindo Manhit, political analyst, thank you so much for being with us again on the show. Maraming salamat sa iyo, Dindo.
Thank you.
We've been told before, don't talk politics at the dinner table or the family reunion or in Viber groups and risk warfare, digital or otherwise. But we can talk about it here at this table on this show, your weekly political appointment fix, politics as usual. I'm Pia Hontiveros. See you back here next Wednesday, 8 p.m.